Secret radio stations posed as loyal Nazi broadcasts, but their true purpose was far more dangerous. German soldiers discovered their leaders had concealed devastating losses, while corruption spread unchecked through the ranks. A mysterious voice called Der Chef exposed scandals that shook trust within the Nazi leadership. Millions of leaflets dropped from the sky carried two words that promised to save thousands of lives. Even Goebbels himself admitted the enemy's messages were reaching grateful audiences across Germany. What they heard next would change how an entire nation viewed the war. Before we dive in, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, what time it is for you right now. Black propaganda radio broadcasts. While German families gathered around their radios expecting news from their own government, they had no idea they were being deceived. The British political warfare executive created something brilliant and dangerous: fake German radio stations that sounded completely real. These weren't obvious enemy broadcasts. They pretended to be loyal Nazi stations broadcasting from inside Germany itself. German citizens trusted these voices because they sounded like one of their own. The announcers spoke perfect German, used local slang, and even played German music between segments. But every word was carefully designed by British intelligence to plant seeds of doubt. The stations mixed truth with lies so cleverly that listeners couldn't tell the difference. They reported real events to build trust, then slowly added information that made Germans question their leaders. This trick was called black propaganda because its true source remained hidden in the shadows. And the most famous of these secret stations was about to introduce a voice that would haunt the Nazi leadership. His name was Der Chef, and Germans everywhere began listening to his shocking revelations. Gustav Siegfried Eins and Der Chef. The voice called himself Der Chef, the chief. He came through radio static, claiming to be a loyal Nazi who loved Germany but hated the corruption he saw spreading through the party. Thousands of Germans tuned in to a station called Gustav Siegfried Eins, believing they were hearing a patriot speak truth from within their own country. Der Chef told stories that made people's blood boil, tales of middle-ranking Nazi officials living in luxury while soldiers faced elimination on the front lines. He described these officials as stupid, greedy, and amoral, exposing their alleged scandals in vivid detail. But here's what made it so effective. Der Chef also criticized the Allies. This made him seem balanced and trustworthy, not like enemy propaganda. Germans thought, if he criticizes both sides, he must be telling the truth. In reality, every word was scripted in a British office. The goal wasn't just to anger Germans, it was to make them distrust their own leaders and believe the Nazi party was falling apart from the inside. But Der Chef wasn't the only fake voice reaching German ears. Soldatensender Calais. Another secret station targeted a specific audience: German soldiers fighting in France. It was called Soldatensender Calais, and it pretended to be a German military radio station providing news for troops. Soldiers trusted it completely. The station played popular German songs, reported sports scores, and shared information that seemed helpful and accurate. Then, buried between the music and weather reports, came the poison. Soldatensender Calais mixed real facts with carefully designed disinformation. They'd report true battle updates to maintain credibility, then add demoralizing news about losses that German command tried to hide. Soldiers heard about their units being surrounded, about supply lines cut off, about battles going far worse than official reports claimed. The announcers sounded concerned, like fellow soldiers worried about their comrades. This made the dark news feel even more real and trustworthy. German troops started doubting their own officers' reports and believing the radio instead. Morale began cracking, one broadcast at a time. While these fake voices whispered through radios, millions of pieces of paper began falling from the sky. Airborne leaflets. Imagine standing in a field and watching thousands of papers flutter down from bomber planes flying overhead. Allied aircraft dropped millions of these leaflets behind enemy lines during their missions. German soldiers would find them scattered across battlefields, streets, and countryside. Each leaflet was a tiny weapon designed to attack not the body, but the mind. The papers were small enough to fit in a pocket, but powerful enough to change a soldier's entire perspective on the war. Some showed maps of Allied advances that contradicted what German radio claimed. Others displayed photographs of captured cities or destroyed German equipment. The Allies printed these messages in perfect German using fonts and styles that looked official and trustworthy. Bombers would release the leaflets during regular attack runs, so distributing propaganda cost almost nothing extra. As papers fell like snow across occupied Europe, German soldiers faced a choice: believe what their commanders told them, or believe what they held in their trembling hands. Some of these leaflets revealed truths the Nazi government desperately tried to hide. Highlighting German losses. Nazi propaganda told Germans they were winning. Every broadcast celebrated victories. Every newspaper printed stories of enemy defeats. But the leaflets falling from Allied planes told a very different story. These papers listed actual German casualties, real numbers of soldiers who wouldn't come home. They named specific battles where German forces faced heavy losses, battles the Nazi media never mentioned. The leaflets would say things like, "What your government is not telling you," and then provide facts about destroyed divisions, captured equipment, and retreating armies. For soldiers on the front lines who witnessed these losses firsthand, the leaflets confirmed what they already suspected. They were being lied to. For families back home who hadn't heard from loved ones in months, these papers offered terrible answers to their questions. The contrast was devastating. Nazi radio claimed glorious progress, while Allied leaflets showed the heartbreaking truth. Slowly, Germans began trusting the enemy's honesty more than their own government's promises. The foundation of Nazi morale started crumbling. But one leaflet campaign became legendary for offering something unexpected: hope. The I Surrender campaign. Allied commanders understood something important. Scared soldiers needed a way out. So they created one of the most famous propaganda campaigns of the entire war, the I Surrender leaflets. These papers taught German soldiers how to surrender safely by providing the phonetic German spelling of I surrender in English. The leaflets spelled it as I surrender, so German soldiers could pronounce it correctly even if they'd never spoken English before. But the genius wasn't just the language lesson, it was the promise that came with it. The leaflets guaranteed humane treatment as prisoners of war. They described warm meals, medical care, and safety from the fighting. They even claimed these two words had already saved thousands of German lives. For exhausted soldiers trapped in hopeless battles, these papers offered something more valuable than ammunition: a chance to survive. Many Germans kept these leaflets hidden in their pockets like secret lifelines, waiting for the right moment. When that moment came, those two simple words became their escape. The Allies weren't just targeting Germans, they had special messages for Germany's allies, too. Targeting Italian allies. Italy fought alongside Germany, but the partnership was filled with tension and resentment. Allied intelligence knew this and exploited it brilliantly. Special leaflets dropped over Italian positions played on every frustration Italian soldiers felt toward their German allies. The leaflets claimed Germany had betrayed Italy repeatedly, abandoning Italian troops on various battlefields when the fighting got tough. The leaflets reminded Italians that Germans treated them as inferior partners, not equals. They pointed out how German commanders gave Italians the most dangerous assignments while keeping their own soldiers safer. Some leaflets even suggested Germans were taking Italy's resources while providing little support in return.
For Italian soldiers already tired of war and suspicious of their German counterparts, these messages struck deep. The propaganda didn't need to invent these feelings. It simply amplified resentment that already existed. The result was predictable. Italian morale collapsed, trust between the Axis partners weakened, and eventually Italy switched sides entirely. Yet propaganda alone wasn't enough. It needed something else to maximize its impact.
Propaganda aiding bombing effects. The most devastating propaganda came wrapped in terror from above. Historical research revealed a striking pattern. Areas that experienced heavy Allied bombing while also receiving clear radio signals showed dramatically higher domestic resistance against the Nazi government. This wasn't coincidence. It was psychological warfare at its finest. When bombs fell on German cities, propaganda broadcasts would follow immediately, explaining why the attack happened and warning of more to come. The combination was crushing. Physical destruction from bombs created fear and despair, while propaganda messages magnified that psychological damage by highlighting military failures and promising additional strikes. Families huddling in bomb shelters would later turn on their radios and hear voices confirming their worst fears. Germany was losing, more attacks were coming, and their leaders had no solution. The propaganda transformed bombing from a military operation into a complete assault on German will to fight. Where explosions shattered buildings, psychological messages shattered hope. The Allies even turned Hollywood movies into weapons that reached millions. The Allied propaganda campaign proved that words could be as powerful as weapons. Through fake radio stations, millions of leaflets, and carefully crafted messages, they shattered German morale from within. Der Chef's voice, the I Surrender papers, and Hollywood speeches all worked together to break the Axis spirit. Even Goebbels admitted the enemy had won this hidden war. Sometimes the greatest victories happen not on battlefields, but inside the minds of those who fight.